Welcome everyone to the program. I'm Eric Hammond. We're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. Today we've got the latest on the political assassination of Charlie Kirk, as well as other information coming in today on the latest headlines from the United States and around the world. We began first, of course, with the latest headlines. The UK sacks Peter Mandelson as its ambassador to the U.S. after mounting criticism over the diplomat's links with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Israel's army says it's intercepted a missile fired from Yemen a day after its forces carried out airstrikes in the Houthi-backed country that killed 35 and wounded more than 130. Poland says that the UN Security Council will hold an emergency meeting to discuss Russian drones violating the country's airspace. The Philippines says it strongly protests China's plan to establish a nature reserve at the Scarborough Shoal. This comes amid Beijing's move to reinforce its territorial claims and maritime rights in the South China Sea. And the death toll from the deadly flash floods that swept 2 Indonesian islands, including Bali, rises to 19, with 5 others missing. We begin today in Utah, where Charlie Kirk, a conservative activist and a close ally of President Donald Trump, was shot dead Wednesday afternoon during an event on the campus at Utah Valley University. The killing occurred during one of his Prove Me Wrong debates, where Kirk regularly engaged in rapid-fire debates with college students that drew both supporters and critics. Now, according to officials and eyewitness accounts, the shooting happened about 20 minutes into his appearance, after which a single shot rang out and Kirk immediately collapsed. The crowd of nearly 3,000 attendees scattered in panic as his wife and children, who were also present at the event, watched in horror.
We're not counting gang violence. Great.
There were gunshots.
Later, eyewitnesses said that security was practically non-existent at the venue and described the event as chaotic, with people running, screaming, and jumping to save their own lives.
Wasn't security checkpoints. When I saw that they were coming, I went onto the site, got my ticket, and so I had it on my phone ready to show. And when I showed up, there was nobody looking at tickets. There was no like any type of security. They weren't checking bags. They weren't putting you through metal detectors. There was some cops, some police officers. I don't know how many.
It was a mix of both people running, people ducking, people jumping into the fountain and running for their lives. So, but at that point, I understood that this was a targeted political assassination. And that's why I decided to stick around and pull out my phone, because there were no other shots after that first one. The sounds that I heard, it was a plethora of individuals screaming. Some people immediately started crying. Some people were praying.
University officials later said the fatal shot was fired from the roof of a building roughly 100 to 200 yards from the event area. Investigators, however, are still determining whether the gunman fired from the rooftop itself or an open window. Now, the killing of Charlie Kirk immediately set off waves of condemnation across the political spectrum. President Donald Trump announced his death on Truth Social and called it an act of radical left political violence, arguing that inflammatory rhetoric against conservatives was fueling terrorism in America. The president also ordered all American flags throughout the United States to be lowered to half-mast.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today. and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country.
Now, Utah's governor also weighed in, calling it a political assassination.
This is a dark day for our state. It's a tragic day for our nation. And I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination.
Bill Clinton said the killing left him saddened and angry, urging Americans to recommit to debating passionately but peacefully. George W. Bush condemned the murder as cold-blooded, and former Presidents Barack Obama and Joe Biden both issued statements calling the act despicable and insisting that violence has no place in American democracy. Law enforcement officials quickly described the incident as a targeted attack, confirming that Kirk was the only victim and that just one shot was in fact fired. The Utah Department of Public Safety said a manhunt was underway with state police and the FBI devoting full investigative and tactical resources to track down the suspect. 2 people were briefly detained earlier in the day, but both were released without any connection to the shooting, underscoring the fact that the gunman remains at large. The FBI has also established a digital line for the public to share tips. And now Charlie Kirk rose to national prominence at a young age, co-founding Turning Point USA at just 18 years of age. Over the years, the group grew into the largest conservative youth movement in the country. Kirk was also a staunch ally of President Trump and was known as a fierce critic of mainstream media and a provocative voice in America's culture wars. Now, as police and federal agents continue their hunt for the gunman, America is left to grapple with a high-profile act of political violence. And staying in the United States, 3 former FBI officials have filed a federal lawsuit against FBI Director Kash Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi, alleging that their firings were politically motivated to appease President Donald Trump. The lawsuit filed in Washington, D.C. claims Patel carried out the dismissals under pressure from the White House and the Justice Department, targeting agents involved in investigations related to President Donald Trump. The suit was brought by Brian Driscoll, who briefly served as acting FBI Director, Steve Jensen, former Assistant Director in charge of the Washington Field Office, and Spencer Evans, former Special Agent in charge of the Las Vegas Field Office. Now, according to the complaint, Patel told Driscoll that he had no choice but to fire certain agents because his ability to keep his own job depended on the removal of the agents who worked on cases involving the president.
Patel not only acted unlawfully, but deliberately chose to prioritize politicizing the FBI over protecting the American people. His decision to do so degraded the country's national security by firing 3 of the FBI's most experienced operational leaders, each of them experts in preventing terrorism and reducing violent crime.
The lawsuit also details efforts by other Trump allies to influence personnel decisions. Emil Bove, a former top Justice Department official, allegedly pressured Driscoll to compile a list of agents involved in the investigation of the January 6th Capitol attack. Then Spencer Evans, the former head of the Las Vegas Field Office, was reportedly fired over accusations related to his oversight of COVID-19 vaccine exemption requests, though the lawsuit claims there was no misconduct.
The public's confidence in the FBI hinges on the commitment of every FBI employee, from the newest special agent to the director, to relentlessly adhere to the rule of law without fear or favor. Americans should demand FBI leaders who make decisions based solely on the facts of an investigation and never on the desired outcome of one.
The complaint alleges these dismissals violated the First and Fifth Amendment rights of the former officials, including protections of free speech, association, and due process. The lawsuit requests that the firings be declared illegal, the 3 officials reinstated, and back pay awarded. It also seeks a forum for name clearing to restore their professional reputations. The FBI and the Justice Department has declined to comment, however, on the lawsuit. And as the legal battle unfolds, the lawsuit could set the stage for a high-stakes examination of how much influence political considerations can have over the nation's top law enforcement agency. On 9/11/2001, a bright Tuesday morning turned into the deadliest day on U.S. soil. Within 3 hours, hijacked planes brought down the Twin Towers in New York City, struck the Pentagon, and left a scar that has never truly healed. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost as the world watched in disbelief. Those attacks changed America forever. 24 years later, bells once again prepare to toll in New York. Names will be read at Ground Zero, and the memory of that tragic morning still endures. Here's more as a nation and world remembers.
Everybody calm down. Walk forward.
We were trying to dig him out. He was alive, and then it collapsed again on us.
I heard the plane, a plane, right over my left shoulder, looked up and
September 11th, 2001 was a bright morning in New York. But in just 3 hours, America faced its greatest test. At 7:59 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 took off from Boston. On board were 5 hijackers who turned the plane into a weapon. Nearly an hour later, the North Tower was struck. Fire tore through the skyline. Confusion swept the city.
I was at our church and the phone rang and somebody said a plane had flown into the building. And I was like, oh, it's a Cessna, it's nothing. And then when we heard a second plane had hit, I realized it was something much bigger.
In Florida, President George W. Bush sat inside a classroom. An aide leaned over and said a plane has hit the World Trade Center. The president stayed calm because the full truth had not yet emerged. 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., a United Airlines Flight 175 slammed into the South Tower. This time, the whole world saw it live. It was no accident. It was war.
I was actually in my second grade classroom when it happened, but I remember that day so clearly. And student after student was going home. My classmates lost their parents. My friends lost their, their family. And it was a really horrible day. And that being said, we come every year to remember everyone, and it still takes its toll on you, of course. It's a hard day.
Nearly 30 minutes later, American Airlines Flight 77 hit the Pentagon, and the command center of U.S. military power was burning. A minute before the clock struck 10 a.m., the South Tower collapsed. Manhattan was consumed in smoke and screams.
What came down, though? What came down? We crashed! The other trade center's down. It's down.
Jesus! Lord Jesus! Oh, Jesus!
Okay, we'll get him out.
In Pennsylvania, passengers aboard Flight 93 kept fighting back. They stopped the hijackers, crashing the plane into a field. 40 lives were lost, but they saved countless others. Sharp at 10:28 a.m., the North Tower fell. The proud Twin Towers were gone, and nearly 3,000 lives were lost. America was changed forever. That night, President Bush addressed the nation. His words were firm. Justice would be done.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand.
From that day came new wars, new security, and new scars. And yet, even after 24 years, the memory has not faded. Now it is 2025. New York prepares to mark the 24th anniversary. At 8:46 a.m., bells tolled. Families gathered at Ground Zero. The names of the victims were once again read aloud. Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to join mourners at the ceremony. President Donald Trump is also expected to take part, continuing his presence at past commemorations. The politics of today may be sharp and divided, but for this morning, America will stand together. To remember, to honor, to never forget. September 11th, 2001, the day terror struck. September 11th, 2025, the day of remembrance. Different years. Same promise, America remembers.
Former Vice President Kamala Harris is making headlines for her upcoming memoir. Months after losing the 2024 presidential election to President Donald Trump, the Democratic leader has revealed her take on the defeat. The former vice president has written a memoir titled 107 Days, detailing her presidential campaign. In an excerpt released by The Atlantic, she called it reckless for former President Joe Biden to run for a second term in 2024 and details tensions within the White House, serving as the first woman and person of color to hold the position of vice president.
Was it grace or was it recklessness? In retrospect, I think it was recklessness. The stakes were simply too high. This wasn't a choice that should have been left to an individual's ego, an individual's ambition. It should have been more than a personal decision.
The former vice president states she was in a difficult position, unable to counsel former President Biden against running for re-election, while everyone around her insisted it's Jill and Joe's decision. Harris, who became the Democratic presidential nominee, wrote that the 81-year-old president got tired during the campaign and that his physical and verbal stumbles reflected his age. She added that when inaccurate or unfair stories about her surfaced, the White House seemed indifferent, treating her accomplishments as a threat.
When Fox News attacked me on everything, from my laugh, to my tone of voice, to whom I dated in my 20s, or claimed I was a DEI hire, the White House rarely pushed back with my actual resume. 2 terms elected DA, top cop in the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, senator representing 1 in 8 Americans.
The memoir also touches on former Vice President Harris' disappointment with Joe Biden personally. After he dropped out of the race and endorsed her as the Democratic nominee, he barely mentioned her in the televised Oval Office address, waiting nearly 9 minutes into an 11-minute speech to acknowledge her.
And of all the people in the White House, I was in the worst position to make the case that he should drop out. I knew it would come off to him as incredibly self-serving if I advised him not to run. He would see it as naked ambition, perhaps as poisonous disloyalty, even if my only message was, don't let the other guy win.
Harris also discusses her time overseeing immigration policy, which President Trump used to great effect during the presidential campaign. Harris also mentioned the fights over stagecraft and positioning between her staff and that of the president's. She recounts moments when she broke ranks, however, with the administration. For example, in March of 2024, she criticized the humanitarian crisis resulting from Israel's war in Gaza, a speech that went viral but displeased the West Wing. According to the former vice president, the White House operated under a zero-sum mindset. If she shined, it was assumed Biden would appear weaker. Nevertheless, Harris's loyalty to Biden was evident. She goes on to say that Biden's poor debate performance, which ultimately led to his exit from the race, was linked to his jam-packed schedule. She said the debate took place after 2 back-to-back trips to Europe and a Hollywood fundraiser on the West Coast. The former vice president's memoir is set to be released on September 23rd with a book tour spanning 15 cities as part of the launch. The former vice president's memoir, titled 107 Days, is set to offer a rare inside view of the 2024 campaign, the White House dynamics, and her personal reflections on Biden, the Democratic Party, and our own path to the nomination. And finally, in a single day, Oracle's Larry Ellison didn't just cash in. He carved his name in history with the largest wealth surge ever recorded. $101 billion added overnight, and Ellison surpassed Elon Musk to become the world's richest man briefly. It's a reminder that in the area of power and money, markets can crown a king within hours, and wealth itself can shift as dramatically as the winds of Wall Street. Our final story has all the details.
It was the biggest single-day wealth jump the world has ever seen. $101 billion added overnight. And the man behind this record-breaking leap? Larry Ellison, the co-founder of Oracle. The man surpassed Elon Musk and briefly became the world's richest man yesterday. This wasn't a slow climb. It was an overnight explosion. Oracle shares shot up 42% in a single day, and with Ellison's net worth soaring to nearly $393 billion, he quietly stepped out of the shadows to claim the spotlight, reshaping the conversation about who really rules the tech-driven future. For perspective, Jeff Bezos' single-day gains during Amazon's peak growth were roughly $13 billion in a day. Warren Buffett? Barely 10. So Larry Ellison just rewrote the playbook. But how did he do it? The secret lies in the cloud. Oracle has transformed itself into an AI powerhouse. Once dismissed as old-school software, Oracle is now providing the very backbone for artificial intelligence. And its biggest customer? OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT. Earlier this summer, Oracle signed a deal so massive and unprecedented that it turned heads across Silicon Valley. 4.5 gigawatts of data capacity now dedicated to training AI. That is, enough energy to power millions of American homes. Add to that contracts with NVIDIA, TSMC, Broadcom, TikTok's parent, ByteDance, and 3 separate multi-billion-dollar deals in just 1 quarter. Oracle's future bookings now stand at a jaw-dropping $455 billion. That's 4 times higher than a year ago, and the company projected record growth for the current financial year, sending investor confidence soaring. The market loved it. Investors piled in. And Ellison, who owns nearly 1.16 billion shares, watched his fortune balloon. Meanwhile, Musk was slipping. Tesla shares are down 8% this year, wiping out nearly $49 billion from his net worth. For almost a year, Musk sat comfortably at the top. But this time, he blinked, and Ellison sprinted past him. Ellison currently owns approximately 40% of Oracle, the software company he founded in 1977. He ran it as CEO for 37 years. And even today, with more than 1 billion shares in hand, the smallest stock swing can shift his net worth by tens of billions. His fortune also stretches across real estate, media, and technology bets, from Hawaiian Islands to health records giant Cerner, which Oracle bought for $28 billion. It's worth remembering, Larry Ellison is no stranger to Musk's empire. He was once a Tesla board member, holding 45 million shares before stepping down in 2022. Ellison has also positioned himself close to politics. He is a vocal supporter of Donald Trump and appeared with him at the launch of the $500 billion Stargate AI project in the United States. It is a rare alignment of money, technology, and political power, with Oracle at the center. Ellison's rise is more than just numbers. It's the story of a man who reinvented a company, from databases to the very core of artificial intelligence, from software to cloud wars, from boardrooms to the White House, where he now champions a $500 billion AI project called Stargate. It's about a man who built an empire in the cloud, and then used that cloud to rise above them all. Musk has now reclaimed his position, and Ellison is now second in the billionaires list. But his rise shows that in the world of billionaires, fortunes can shift as quickly as the markets that make them.
From all of us here at Firstpost America, we certainly want to thank all of you for tuning in, not just today, but every day. Thanks again for watching, and we look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow.